Hey, Joe here. It's been an acoustic guitar themed week here on Home Studio Corner, and I want to wrap it up today by talking a little bit about how to mix the acoustic guitars that we recorded earlier this week. If you missed those videos, there should be a link down below. Check them out. But today we're going to talk through how my current method for mixing acoustic guitars. Fair warning, it's really simple. Okay, let's go. Okay, here's the part we recorded with two microphones, you may recall, in an XY configuration. Let's hear what that sounds like. Sounds fine, has a little bit of width to it, which I like, but it's a little quiet. One of my big things I talk about a lot is you don't have to record at really, really loud levels. You get nothing tone-wise from it being louder, but you run the risk of clipping on the way in, which ruins it, which makes it unusable. I like to record at really conservative levels, and that has worked really well for me. I think you should try it. But this is a little bit quiet. I'd like it a little bit louder. And what I like to do here is use the Normalize function in my DAW. Boop. There it is right there. Normalize in Studio One. If you open up this side over here, there's a little Normalize button checkbox. What that does is takes the highest peak and turns the whole audio up until that highest peak is as loud as it can go without clipping. So that just shows me that I've got a little extra volume there. I usually pull it down from fully normalized though, depending on the track. Now there are a couple ways you can approach mixing acoustic guitar, and it varies widely depending on what else is happening in the song. If it's just an acoustic guitar and a vocal, for example, you can let the acoustic guitar be nice and big and full and rich. However, if we're talking about a full band arrangement where there's lots of other instruments happening, then you've got to leave room for everything else. And the acoustic guitar tends to become a lot thinner in that scenario. It doesn't need to be this big, full thing because it's just a small piece of a bigger puzzle, okay? So I'm going to show you specifically how I would mix this if this was going to be just a guitar vocal demo, singer-songwriter type deal. So the first thing I want to do, the way I approach almost anything mixing-wise, is I listen to the raw tracks and I decide if there's anything that needs to be fixed first, and then I can address any other things I might like to add. So I start with subtractive stuff, take things away that are bad, before thinking about adding any good stuff. And before we dive in anymore, I have to say, it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, the mix is only going to be as good as the recording. If the recording isn't that great, you can't magically fix it in the mix. I know I say that a lot, but it needs to be said because people tend to not get it. So what I'm going to do is grab a really basic EQ and put it on this track. And we're going to listen and see what, if anything, the track needs. Sometimes the track may need nothing. You may literally not touch it in a mix, and that's okay. You don't have to throw a bunch of stuff on a track just because you think you should. Give it a listen first and then decide. So let's do that now. Something that happens a lot with acoustic guitar, especially with strummed acoustic guitar, and especially if it's a thicker pick, is there's this kind of foop that can happen. It's just a sound that kind of emanates from the guitar whenever the down strum happens. You can actually see it in the waveform here. Boom, boom, boom. It's just happening on every down strum. And it's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of acoustic guitar recordings and mixes sound boomy, because there's just that little bit of frequencies that are jumping out more than everything else. You can even see it in the EQ right here. So while all the other frequencies are hanging out down here, there's one that's raising its hand saying, hey, I'm too loud. So we're going to go find it and address it right now. So you have to be careful. There are times when you may find a frequency that you boost and sounds bad, but it's actually not the problem. So let me play it again without EQ and I'll tell you what I'm hearing. It's kind of a ooh, 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 right in there, as awkward as that was. Let's see if we can find it. So that one that's jumping out on the spectrum analyzer here isn't actually the frequency I'm hearing. It's a little bit lower. we found it. So we're going to take that and we're going to just bring it down. So we're not trying to get rid of that frequency. It's just out of balance. So let's bring it down a little bit. And that's kind of called a notch, where you make it pretty narrow. So you turn up the Q here to make it fairly narrow. Those frequencies are still there, but now it's not as obvious. It's not taking over. Here it is without the EQ. Here it is with the EQ. It's not a huge difference, but it makes you not have a headache after mixing this song for an hour. So that's the main thing I heard. Let's listen again and see if there's anything else we want to address. I think I want to widen that cut out. There's still a little bit of kind of junk in there. Let's mess with that a little bit. Now the overall low end is feeling pretty good, but I want to be able to adjust it and see if we can make it feel a little bit warmer. So I'm going to use a shelf, which looks like this. It just takes whatever frequency we set and turns everything else below it. I like to start a little bit higher at like 220 or so and just see what happens when I boost and cut it here. I think I can bring it down a little bit lower and just get a little extra low end out of this thing. See, it's funny, it feels counterintuitive. We just took out that boop, boop frequency, but now we're turning up the low, boom, boom, kind of this big low end there that we're not going to try to emphasize too much, but we're just turning it down. And I will use a high-pass filter just in case there's really low stuff that comes through on bigger speaker systems. Shouldn't really affect the sound all that much, though. Now, is there anything else we hear that needs to be addressed? We've got the low end tightened up a little bit. Is there anything else? Let's listen. I think I want to take this down a little bit more, just a smidge. It still feels a little bit bumpy down there. Okay, that feels good. Any more and it starts to kind of take all the life away from the guitar. This, by the way, this shelf down here, this is the kind of thing that you can do when it's a more simple arrangement, but if it starts to get drums, bass, and other big instruments, you probably don't have this boost here, and you may even bring it the other way and cut out some more low end to make room for all the other instruments that are going to have some low end on them as well. Last thing, I feel like I hear some mid-range stuff I want to take care of. Like maybe there's a little bit of a sort of a cheap-ish sound in the mid-range. Let's just go see if we can find it. Yeah, it's right there in there. Kind of right in there. Let's see what happens when we cut it. All right, that's feeling pretty good to me. I warned you this was going to be simple. This is pretty typical for an acoustic guitar mix for me. Now, I may use a different EQ, but in general, this is it. There's probably a low-mid problem. There's probably a little bit of low end that you can manipulate a little bit more. And then sometimes there's a upper mid or mid-range frequency that maybe needs to be tamed a little bit. I did mostly cutting with a little bit of boost in the low end, and it's not dramatically different. Here's the before. Here's the after. If you're expecting really huge dramatic change, you're thinking all wrong about this. The big dramatic change happens when you get the microphone and mic placement right to make the raw recording sound as good as it can sound. Then the mixing is just little tweaks here and there that are going to make it better. If that's not been your experience, I challenge you to spend more time on the recording side and less time on the mixing side, and you'll see what I'm talking about. By the way, if you need more practice on the mixing end of things, on how to do what I just did here, and you're also looking for some tracks that give you an idea of what a well-recorded acoustic guitar can sound like, you need to check out Mix Practice. It's one of my courses where you get all the multi-tracks to all the songs that I've produced as an artist. So there's like over 50 tunes there. If you sign up, you come over here, you log into Mix Practice, and as you can see, you have access to, this is my most recent release called Fighter. You can listen to each song, and then you can download the corresponding multi-tracks to every single one of these songs. So if you find one that you like, go for it, or maybe you want to mix through a whole album. You can do any of those things as a Mix Practice customer. Just head over to homestudiocorner.com/practice. All right, that's it for me. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you.